Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Aaron Rodgers is dealing with some back tightness and felt it during Sunday's game against the New York Jets, which he believes led to 2 sacks for the Jets. Rodgers says he fully trusts the Steelers' offensive line and that he would have been able to escape 2 pockets if not for the back tightness that prevented him from moving as fluidly as he would have liked. "I don't think I was moving that well," Rodgers said. "I think I ran kind of into at least 1 or 2 sacks. So, I've got to do a better job of using my legs. I might be old, but I still feel like I can move around pretty good, and I wasn't moving the way I usually like to move." Rodgers singled out Broderick Jones as someone who he still believes in even with some of his struggles. More importantly, Rodgers does not believe all of the sacks credited to Jones were on him, but rather that some of his own limitations caused some of those sacks when he stepped up in the pocket. "I thought the protection was pretty good for most of the game," Rodgers said. "There's a couple fundamental things to clean up. Pat Meyer's gonna take care of those guys. I've just got to get the ball out. I really like Brod. I've gotten to know him during training camp. I like what he's about. I like his attitude. He's a genuinely positive guy. I've got a lot of confidence in him watching my back." Rodgers received a massage on Monday and Tuesday in addition to ice baths. He says he did not take too many shots, which helped him stay healthy and feel good following the game. Moving forward, he would like to see his own mobility improve, which he sees as paramount to minimizing some of the pressure the offensive line will give up. After allowing 182 rushing yards last week to the New York Jets, the Steelers could be experimenting with different ways to stop the ground game ahead of their Week 2 matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. Speaking to the media on Thursday, Steelers defensive coordinator Teryl Austin said he expects rookie defensive lineman Yahya Black to see more playing time against Seattle per Steelers now's Alan Saunders. Black played 24 of the Steelers' 64 defensive snaps against the Jets, behind Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton, and Isaiah Loudermilk on the defensive line depth chart. At 336 pounds, Black is the biggest lineman on the Steelers roster. The rookie was a standout run defender in college, and he showed a lot of promise in the 2025 preseason. Against the Jets last week, he recorded 2 tackles but left some plays on the table. Still, Austin emphasized that it's important not to play Black too much. "We've seen really good progress with him," he said via Saunders. "With young guys, you don't want to overload them early and have them fail." Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf connected for 4 receptions and 82 yards in the Pittsburgh Steelers win over the New York Jets on Sunday, and that is just a microcosm of a connection that has blossomed over the last few months. Rodgers says Metcalf does the right thing and works hard day in and day out behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Rodgers noted it is not that way everywhere around the league, so he appreciates Metcalf's work ethic. "He's about the right stuff. He cares about enough to watch the film and put in the time and take notes and ask questions and come over and sit next to me during the week at various times to try and get on the same page. That's unfortunately not the standard around the league," Rodgers said. Rodgers went on to compare Metcalf to Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, and his longtime best friend, Davante Adams. Those players continued to work hard and improved on their games, eventually becoming staple targets for Rodgers. "That was the standard a lot of times in Green Bay because those guys kind of saw what it was like with Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb and James Jones. And Davante got to watch that, and he was the next guy in line. When you're lead dog in the room, he's also a great guy and prepares the right way. It makes it easy for the rest of the room to just follow his lead," Rodgers said. Metcalf requested a trade out of Seattle this offseason and got his wish, being traded to the Steelers for a second-round draft pick. He had 4 receptions for 82 yards in his first game, with 68 of those yards coming after the catch. The Steelers figure to use him heavily in the passing offense, and this week should be no different, and he will continue putting his head down to work. Going back to last year, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been trying to upgrade their number 2 wide receiver spot. For a brief moment this offseason, they had their answer, but then they traded George Pickens. Since then, they've poked around a few different receivers, but they haven't made any significant additions. However, perhaps that could change if Miami Dolphins receiver Tyreek Hill becomes available. Could he potentially be on the move? NFL insider James Palmer said recently on Bleacher Report's YouTube channel. "Certainly. Could it be closer to the trade deadline? That's much more likely. This could be a fourth-round pick. This could be a fifth-round pick. It could be somewhere in that range, but it's not something that the Dolphins are entertaining right now, to my understanding. It's something they didn't entertain in the offseason. Teams called during the offseason as they were watching the Dolphins go through this process. Teams asked, and the Dolphins said no. Could that change before the course of the trade deadline? Certainly, but it's way too early to do that. Hill has been one of the best receivers in the league for several years. His speed makes him electric, and he has been a first-team All-Pro multiple times. In 2023, he posted his third straight season of over 100 receptions, pairing that with 1,799 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns. However, Hill had a down year in 2024. He caught 81 passes for 954 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's still a fine year, but it doesn't meet Hill's standards. His relationship with the Dolphins looked like it soured last season, culminating in a trade request this offseason. While he walked that back eventually, things still seemed tense in Miami. Hill had an underwhelming Week 1, catching 4 passes for 40 yards as the Dolphins got blown out by the Indianapolis Colts. If things continue to go wrong for the Dolphins, then maybe Hill will be on the move. If Palmer is correct, then it shouldn't cost much in the way of draft capital to acquire him. While he could be on the decline, even if he's only as good as he was last year, he could be an upgrade for the Steelers. However, the situation is more complicated than that. Hill is being investigated on allegations of domestic violence. His history with the law isn't pretty, to say the least. Therefore, that issue could have a dramatic impact on the Steelers' potential interest in him. We'll see how things with Hill develop as the season progresses. It doesn't seem like anything major is imminent with him, though. The Steelers' offense had a good showing in Week 1, so maybe they don't need to upgrade at wide receiver. The next few weeks should help make this picture a little clearer. The Pittsburgh Steelers and other NFL teams have not shown interest in a Tyreek Hill trade, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. Schefter says that no one has called about the star receiver, which comes days after a report by Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk that the Steelers and Kansas City Chiefs were interested. The facts are the Miami Dolphins haven't gotten any calls about Tyreek Hill.
0.
The facts are the Dolphins are not looking to deal Tyreek Hill, Schefter said. Hill had a public falling out with some members of the Dolphins organization after saying, "I'm out, bro," following the team's final game last season. Hill instead has tried to mend his relationships with others and the organization, but that has become frayed, and a lack of success within the group has not helped that. Florio says that if the Steelers want to be even more all-in, there is already chatter around the Steelers being the ones to make the move. There's already chatter, in the aftermath of Sunday's win over the Jets, that the all-in Steelers could go even more all-in by making a move for Tyreek Hill, Florio wrote. Yes, Pittsburgh already has receiver DK Metcalf, who's making $30 million per year on a 5-year deal. But the Steelers don't have a clear-cut number 2. Hill would be 1B, if not, at times 1A, to Metcalf. Add in that a league investigation into domestic abuse allegations has commenced against Hill, and it is much harder to sell a trade than it was a few days ago. To trade him, the Dolphins would have to eat dead money, which could drive the cost of a trade up if he does get moved. The Steelers would be a natural spot, but so would the Kansas City Chiefs, who will be without top wide receivers Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice for the next few weeks. Hill's play is not what it once was at the height of his career. He had just 959 receiving yards in 17 games a season ago, a stark drop-off from his 1,700 receiving yards in 2023, where was a Pro Bowler. Now aging, it could be the sign that Hill's play is simply dropping off as he gets older. However, the Steelers could still be involved in potential sweepstakes if the Dolphins would be willing to move Hill.